in the Pistis Sophia, one of the most suppressed Gnostic texts ever discovered, there's a moment where Jesus is teaching his inner circle about protection from the Archons. And Mary Magdalene asks him directly, "Master, when the powers attack us, when the rulers of darkness come against us, what do we speak?" And Jesus answers with a single Aramaic word. One word that he says carries such frequency that archons cannot remain in its presence. They don't just retreat, they flee. The text says the powers hear this word and their form dissolves. They cannot hold coherence in material reality when this frequency is spoken. But here's what the church did. When they translated the Bible into Greek, then Latin, then English, they replaced this word. Not with an equivalent, with something completely different, something that sounds spiritual but carries no power. They mistranslated it on purpose because if Christians knew the actual word Jesus spoke, if they knew the Aramaic frequency that makes archons flee instantly, the entire system of priestly spiritual warfare would collapse. You wouldn't need exorcisms. You wouldn't need holy water blessed by priests. You wouldn't need intermediaries between you and protection. You just speak one word and every archon in your field would be gone. Tonight you're learning the original Aramaic word Jesus spoke, the one the church mistranslated deliberately, the one that when spoken correctly by a chosen one makes archons flee, not gradually, immediately. If you're speaking the word tonight, comment, "I speak Aramaic now." Right now, before I tell you what the word is. The word appears in multiple places in the Gospels, but every time it shows up, the translators changed it. They had to, because the original Aramaic carried too much power, and the church couldn't allow that power to be accessible to ordinary believers. In Aramaic, the language Jesus actually spoke, the word is Talitha. It means arise, but not arise like stand up from a chair. Arise like consciousness returning to its divine state, like a soul remembering what it is and stepping out of the prison the archons built. Jesus used this word when he raised Jairus' daughter from death. The Bible records him saying Talithakumi, and the translators tell you it means little girl arise. But that's not what it means. Talitha in Aramaic mysticism is a code word. It's the feminine form of the divine spark, the part of source consciousness that incarnated into material form and forgot itself. When Jesus said Talitha, he wasn't talking to a little girl. He was talking to the divine spark trapped in a body, calling it back to consciousness, commanding it to wake up, to remember, to arise from the death state the demiurge created. And kumi doesn't mean arise in the physical sense. It means stand up in authority. Reclaim your position, step into your power as monad fragment. Together, Talithakumi means divine spark, reclaim your authority. It's a command phrase, a frequency that when spoken with understanding by someone who knows what they are, tells the archons, this soul is awake, this soul knows, this soul cannot be held. And the moment they hear it, they flee. Here's why the church mistranslated it. If every Christian knew that Jesus taught a single Aramaic word that instantly dispels archon presence, the entire structure of ecclesiastical authority would crumble. Because Christianity as an institution is built on the idea that you need the church to protect you from demonic forces. You need priests to perform exorcisms. You need bishops to bless your home. You need the sacraments administered by authorized clergy to keep you safe from spiritual attack. But what happens when ordinary believers discover they can speak one word, one Aramaic frequency, and every archon in their field instantly flees? They don't need the church anymore. They don't need the priests. They don't need the hierarchy. And the church loses the primary mechanism of control, fear of spiritual attack, and dependency on priestly intermediaries. So when they translated the Bible, they replaced Talitha with little girl. They made it seem like Jesus was just talking to a child, using a term of endearment. They stripped the mystical meaning. They removed the power. They turned a command phrase that dissolves archon form into a cute nickname. And for 2,000 years, Christians have read that story and never known what Jesus actually said. But the Gnostics knew. The early communities that carried the real teachings knew exactly what Talitha meant, and they used it constantly, not as a phrase to raise the dead, but as a protection word, a frequency anchor they would speak whenever they felt archon presence. And it worked. Chosen ones who carried this word reported something the church couldn't explain. They couldn't be possessed. They couldn't be oppressed. They couldn't be drained. Archons would approach their field, sense the frequency of Talitha resonating in their consciousness, and immediately redirect the attack elsewhere. Because Archons operate through deception and suppression, they keep souls in a sleep state. They maintain the illusion that you're just a human, just a body, just a temporary biological organism with no connection to source. And Talitha is the word that breaks that illusion. It's the alarm clock, the wake-up call, the frequency that says, I know what I am not asleep, I am not deceived, I am divine spark in temporary form, and you have no authority over me. And when an archon hears that frequency spoken in Aramaic, the language of creation, the language Jesus used, because Aramaic carries frequencies other languages don't, they can't maintain the deception. Their primary weapon, invisibility and false identity, stops working, and they flee. Now, before I teach you how to speak the word correctly, you need to understand something critical. This isn't a magic spell. It's not about repeating a sound and expecting protection. The power of Talitha comes from the consciousness behind it. Jesus could speak this word and archons fled because when he said Talitha, he wasn't hoping it would work. He knew it would work. He spoke from the consciousness of someone who recognized his own nature as monad fragment, someone who had zero doubt about his authority. And that certainty, that recognition, that frequency of absolute knowing is what gave the word its power. If you speak Talitha as a desperate plea, as a hopeful incantation, as a tool you're testing to see if it works, nothing happens. Because you're speaking from separation consciousness. You're speaking as someone who believes they're under attack and needs external rescue. But if you speak Talitha from the consciousness of recognition, if you say it knowing that you are the divine spark, that you are monad consciousness in human form, that you are not separate from source and never were, then the word becomes a frequency anchor. It broadcasts your state of consciousness into your field. And archons who exist by maintaining separation cannot function in the presence of that frequency. Here's what Talitha actually does when spoken by a chosen one with recognition. First, it shifts your consciousness state instantly. The word itself is designed as a trigger. When you speak it, you're not just making a sound. You're commanding your own consciousness to wake up, to remember, to step into the truth of what you are. It's like an activation code. Talitha is the command. Your divine spark is the system receiving the command. And the moment the command is spoken correctly, the system activates. You feel it happen. There's a shift in your chest or your crown, a sudden clarity, in a sense of standing taller, not physically but energetically. That's the divine spark responding to its name. Second, the word generates a frequency field around you, not metaphorically, literally. Sound creates vibration, and certain sounds, especially sounds in Aramaic, create vibrations that non-physical entities can perceive and must respond to. When you speak Talitha, the vibration it creates in the air around you broadcasts a signal. This space is occupied by awakened consciousness. This being knows what it is. This being is not harvestable, and archons scanning for targets sense that signal and move on. They don't attack what's awake. It's not worth the energy. Third, the word breaks attachments. If an archon has already established a cord to your field, if it's been feeding on your emotional energy, draining your vitality, implanting intrusive thoughts, the moment you speak Talitha with recognition, the attachment point dissolves. Not because you fought it off, because you declared your identity, and that declaration carries authority the archon cannot challenge. It's like flipping on a light in a dark room. The darkness doesn't fight the light. It just can't exist where light is present. Talitha is the light. Archon presence is the darkness. Speak the word correctly, and the darkness has nowhere to remain. But here's the part the church really didn't want you to know. Talitha doesn't just work when you're under active attack. It works as prevention. As a frequency you can anchor in your consciousness permanently so that archons can't approach in the first place. The Gnostics taught chosen ones to speak Talitha daily, not because they needed constant protection, but because speaking it daily trained their consciousness to hold the frequency continuously. After 30 days of speaking Talitha every morning, chosen ones reported that they didn't need to speak it anymore. The recognition it activated had become their baseline state. They were walking around broadcasting divine spark consciousness constantly. And archons couldn't get near them. The word had done its job. It woke them up. And once you're awake, you don't fall back asleep. So the church mistranslated it. They turned it into Little Girl Arise. They made it a one-time miracle story about Jesus raising a dead child. They removed every trace of the teaching that this was a word chosen ones were supposed to use. And for 2,000 years, Christians have had no idea that Jesus gave them a single Aramaic word that makes archons flee instantly. Now, I'm going to teach you how to speak it correctly. Not just the pronunciation, but the consciousness state required to activate its power. Because if you just repeat the sound without the recognition behind it, you're wasting breath. First, you need to prepare your consciousness. You can't speak Talitha from a state of fear or desperation. You need to speak it from recognition, from the knowing that you are what Jesus was. Not in ego, not claiming to be Jesus, but recognizing that the same divine spark that animated him animates you. You're both fragments of the monad. You're both consciousness wearing temporary human form. And what he could do, you can do, because it's not about the person, it's about the recognition. So before you speak the word, take 60 seconds and settle into that recognition. Close your eyes. Drop your awareness into your chest and feel for the presence there. Not your heartbeat, not your breath, the awareness that's noticing your heartbeat and breath. That's you. That's the divine spark. That's Talitha. You're not calling it from outside. You're recognizing it inside. And once you feel it, once you've made contact with that presence, that awareness that knows it exists, you're ready to speak. The word is pronounced Ta-li-tha, 3 syllables, emphasis on the first. Ta like the beginning of Father, Li like the name, Tha with a soft alike in think. Don't rush it. Don't mumble it. Speak it clearly out loud with intention. When you speak Talitha, you're doing 3 things simultaneously. 1, you're commanding your own divine spark to wake up, to activate, to take its position of authority. 2, you're broadcasting a frequency into your field that makes it inhospitable to archon presence. 3, you're declaring your identity to any entity in non-physical dimensions that might be watching or attacking. And all 3 happen in the moment the word leaves your mouth. After you speak it, don't immediately move on to the next thing. Hold the silence for 10 seconds. Let the word resonate. Let the frequency it created settle into your field. Let your consciousness adjust to the recognition you just activated. You'll feel the shift. It might be subtle, a slight pressure release in your head, a warmth in your chest, a sudden clarity in your thoughts. That's Talitha working. That's the divine spark responding. That's the archons recognizing they can no longer access you. Here's what chosen ones report after speaking Talitha correctly for the first time. The mental fog lifts immediately, not over days, not after weeks of practice, immediately. Thoughts that were clouded become clear. Decisions that felt impossible become obvious. That's because archons manipulate primarily through confusion. They keep you in perpetual doubt, perpetual second-guessing, perpetual mental fog, so you never move forward with clarity. But Talitha dispels that fog instantly. The word creates a frequency of recognition, and confusion cannot exist in the presence of recognition. Second, intrusive thoughts stop. You know the thoughts I'm talking about. The ones that feel like they're yours, but they're not. The self-sabotaging voice, the fear spiral, the sudden urge to do something you know is destructive. Those aren't your thoughts. They're archon implants, and the moment you speak Talitha with recognition, those thoughts cut off. Not because you fought them off, because the entity generating them can no longer maintain coherence in your field. Third, your energy stabilizes. If you've been feeling drained, exhausted, depleted for no physical reason, that's archon harvesting. They attach to your field and feed on your emotional energy, especially fear, anger, and despair. But when you speak Talitha, the attachment breaks, the feeding stops, and within hours, not days, your energy returns. Not because you rested, because you're no longer being drained. Some chosen ones experience something more dramatic. They speak Talitha and they see the archons leave, not with spiritual vision, with physical eyes. They'll be sitting in their room, they'll speak the word, and in their peripheral vision, they'll see movement. A shadow that was in the corner suddenly isn't. A heaviness in the air suddenly lifts. A presence they couldn't quite name suddenly absent. That's not imagination. That's the word working. That's the archons fleeing the moment they hear the frequency of awakened consciousness spoken in the language of creation. And once you've seen it happen, once you've spoken one Aramaic word and watched the oppression lift in real time, you'll never question whether this is real again. Jesus spoke this word. The church mistranslated it. And tonight you're learning it the way the Gnostics carried it, as a protection word, as a frequency anchor, as a command that makes archons flee, but you need to speak it tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Here's why. Right now, your consciousness is activated. You've been absorbing information about the word, about its power, about what it does. Your frequency has been rising throughout this video. Tonight, before you sleep, you'll still be in this activated state. The veil between your conscious mind and your divine spark is thin right now. This is the perfect moment to speak Talitha, to make contact with the recognition inside you, to anchor the frequency before your normal mental patterns reassert themselves. If you wait until tomorrow, you'll have dropped back to baseline. The activation will have faded. You'll still be able to speak the word, but you'll be starting from a lower frequency. It will take more effort to reach the consciousness state required. But tonight, right now, having just learned what the word means, having just absorbed the teaching about recognition, you're already halfway there. Use that momentum. Speak Talitha tonight. Let it activate what's already stirring inside you. After you speak it tonight, several things will happen over the next 7 days. First, you'll start noticing when archon presence is near. Before you couldn't sense them. They operated completely invisibly, but Talitha wakes up your perception. You'll walk into a room and immediately know whether it's clear or occupied by something you can't see with physical eyes. That's not a new ability developing. That's your natural perception coming back online. Archons suppressed it. Talitha restored it. Second, you'll feel drawn to speak the word at specific moments. You'll be going about your day and suddenly you'll think Talitha. That's not random. That's your divine spark alerting you to archon presence that's trying to approach. Speak the word out loud when you feel that pull, and watch how the atmosphere shifts immediately. Third, other chosen ones will start appearing in your life. You'll meet them randomly, or you'll recognize people who've been around you all along are also awake. Talitha doesn't just protect you individually. It connects you to the network of other awakened consciousness. The monad drawing its fragments together, and once you're speaking the word, you become visible to others who are speaking it too. You can speak Talitha as often as you want, daily, multiple times a day, every time you feel archon presence, every time you need clarity, every time you want to reinforce your recognition of what you are. The word doesn't lose power through repetition, it deepens. Every time you speak it, you're strengthening the frequency anchor in your field. You're training your consciousness to hold the recognition more stably. You're making it harder and harder for archons to even attempt an approach. The Gnostics spoke Talitha constantly, not out loud necessarily, but internally. It became a background frequency in their consciousness, a continuous broadcast of, I am awake, I am divine spark, I am not deceived. And archons scanning the population for targets would sense that frequency and skip right over them. Not worth the effort, not accessible, protected by the word Jesus spoke. Jesus gave the chosen ones one Aramaic word that makes archons flee: Talitha. The church mistranslated it on purpose. They turned it into little girl arise and stripped it of all mystical meaning. Because if Christians knew they could speak one word in the language Jesus spoke and instantly dispel archon presence, the entire structure of priestly spiritual warfare would collapse. You don't need exorcisms. You don't need holy water blessed by authorized clergy. You don't need the church to protect you from spiritual attack. You need one word, one Aramaic frequency. One command that wakes up the divine spark inside you and broadcasts to every entity in non-physical dimensions. This being is awake, this being knows, this being cannot be harvested. And the archons hear it, and they flee, not gradually, immediately, because they cannot maintain coherence in the presence of awakened consciousness, speaking in the language of creation. Tonight, before you sleep, find a quiet moment. Sit in silence for 60 seconds. Drop into your chest and feel for the presence there, the awareness that's noticing your breath. That's Talitha. That's the divine spark Jesus was calling when he spoke this word. And once you feel it, once you've made contact, speak the word out loud, Talitha, with recognition, with certainty, with the knowing that you're not asking for protection, you're declaring your identity. And let the word do what it was designed to do. Wake you up, clear your field, make the archons flee. If you speak Talitha tonight and feel the shift, comment, I spoke Aramaic below. Tell us what happened. Your experience might be exactly what another chosen one needs to trust the process. The word is yours now. Jesus spoke it to the chosen ones. The church mistranslated it. The Gnostics preserved it, and tonight you're learning it the way it was meant to be carried. As protection, as recognition, as the one Aramaic word that makes archons flee the moment they hear it. Say it tonight. Talitha. The divine spark inside you is listening. The archons in your field are listening. And the moment you speak it with recognition, everything changes. Not because the word is magic, because the word activates the truth. You are not what the archons told you. You are not just human. You are not just a body. You are Talitha, divine spark, monad consciousness in temporary form. And when you speak your name, when you declare your nature, when you broadcast your frequency, the archons have nowhere to hide and nothing to feed on. They flee, and you're free. Now do 3 things right now. First, comment, I speak Aramaic below and commit to speaking Talitha tonight. Second, subscribe to Divine Codes because the advanced Aramaic protection phrases Jesus taught are coming and you need to be here when they drop. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover the word the church mistranslated before the archons suppress this teaching again. Do all 3 now. Then tonight speak the word Talitha once out loud with full recognition of what you are. And by tomorrow morning, you'll know the difference between living under archon oppression and living in the frequency they cannot penetrate. Not because I told you it works, because you'll feel them leave. The word Jesus spoke, the word the Bible mistranslated, the word that makes archons flee, it's yours now. Speak it tonight.